same reason as Yanka. I know Magda very long and I'm really interested in the topic for a long time, so when it's come out, just said yeah, we are coming. And I didn't have enough time to catch you in Australia because I got lost. Oh, that was, I was working and drinking, so I didn't manage honestly, so that's
Okay, thank you, Mirka. Konstantin, would you like to?
So my name is Konstantin and I live in London. I'm centered there. I met Amit 3 years ago. We invited him to my conferences. We had one last year and this year. Science, art and metaphysics, redefining spirituality. So I work with Amit and we developed the meetings. And I came here to have dinner with him tonight.
Great, okay.
Hello, my name is Vladimir. I met Victoria and now we are friends. Pleasure. I'm working at management with some actors from Czech Republic and I'm interested about spirit life. That's why I am here.
Good. Great, thank you. And we have our camera guys over here and technical guys who are taking care of all this. We just decided that we would like to, shoot some short videos with Dr. Goswami being here, not only for you as well to come back to and maybe listen to the discussions one more time. Sometimes it's very beneficial to come back to these topics. That was one reason, and the second reason is, of course, that we would like to very much promote the work of Dr. Goswami and Victoria to show to the others and share the ideas also over the masses, however I call.
But here is also lunch time here,
Yes.
and it's very specific in Czech Republic. We always have a lunch at 12 normally.
Usually.
Okay. So now we will be in delay, but we can start in a very soft manner. Yeah, Magdalena, how we will do it?
Yes, exactly.
Better. What is the best way? What do you think?
Well, what we wanted is really to start with these little talks, and little discussions, over the lunch, over the food. So we arranged some small lunch for all of you. And then, whenever we feel we are ready to sit down and to calm down after lunch, then we can start the presentation and the discussion afterwards. So it's going to be the presentation and discussion will be like a coffee time. Okay, so it's after lunchtime. So I wanted you to get to know each other. I think also networking is quite interesting and important on these events. I am sure that some of you will have questions about others, as you heard your introductions. So please just feel free to just stand up and grab something to eat. There are some tables all around, or you can sit wherever you want to. There is no fixed format for that. So let's have 20-25 minutes to get something to eat. And of course, during the time, anytime you can stand up and grab something to fill your stomachs, because being happy with our stomachs means that we are happy in life, right?
Correct.
Too much may produce the opposite effect. Too much food in your stomach.
Yeah, that's true. So just enough, okay? Don't eat too much. Okay, don't get sleepy. In other words. Okay, good.
Good afternoon. So the topic is quantum activism. Thanks to Victoria, Magdalena, and others, Peter, we are bringing quantum activism to Czech Republic. I'm very happy with that. What is quantum activism and why is it important? We have a definite crisis in the world that was brought about by the way science was, shall we say, misconstructed beginning about the 1950s. Unbeknownst to most people, some very super enthusiastic, very domination-minded people, basically of American origin. They became very enthusiastic about developing a view of the world that they assume will give them a lot of power. There's no better way of putting it. In fact, one of the leaders, he even made the comment, Richard Feynman, wonderful man in many ways, but unfortunately in this particular respect, a very, very limited thinker. He actually confessed that the idea of scientific materialism is a straitjacket. He used the word straitjacket. I'm not putting it in his mouth. But he said we must wear this straitjacket in order to do science. He defines science by saying unless you make that assumption that everything is matter, which is basically what they call scientific materialism. Everything is matter. Human being. Another scientist put it this way: mind is a machine, soul is a machine. So that attitude and the attitude that we must put on this straitjacket of everything is matter in order to do what they felt was science, because they felt that otherwise, and he put it psychology, believe it or not, psychoanalysis, which is a very popular way of doing psychology and helping a lot of people by then, he criticized it as voodoo psychology because it talks about consciousness. Talks about unconscious, especially 2 layers of consciousness. This 2-layer idea is something that scientists cannot tolerate because that takes you away from scientific materialism. According to this, there is only matter, only in space and time. Why quantum physics? Because the quantum physics, the mathematics of quantum physics is from the beginning saying something opposite to this. This is why this movement is so perverted, this scientific materialist movement. There was obviously a fear that quantum worldview, if it gets public, then it will create difficulties for scientists because psychologists will be encouraged. Another domain of reality means unconscious will come back again. Another domain of reality means mystics will get a voice into what reality is about, so religion might come back again. Another domain of reality means artists all of a sudden will get validation for things that they say. Many people, when they look at the Baroque architecture, they see heavenly structures brought about by artistic imagination and put into forms on this earth. So they're all talking about something coming from outside of the material world that enriches our lives and enriches civilization. And this scientists would not tolerate. Contrary to, obviously, lessons of quantum physics. Quantum physics from the get-go is saying the objects are waves of possibility. Objects are waves of possibility. Possibility cannot reside in space and time, obviously. Experiments never can reveal in space and time directly the idea that objects are waves. In space and time, we always see objects as localized particles. Waves spread out, we never see that in space and time. So where do these waves reside? It has to be domain outside of space and time. In fact, it was proven theoretically first in 1935 that yes, this domain even can be defined. In this domain, information or communication can proceed at infinite speed. Infinite speed is not possible in space and time. Speed is always limited. So in that domain, infinite speed communication means that communication does not require anything to mediate, no signals required. If there is nothing required for mediation, What does that mean? That means that the domain is a domain of unity. Everything is one. One does not need any agent of communication if one is communicating with oneself, right? So, I mean, does that, I mean, you have to really be a scientist in order to be scared by all this. Of course, if you're not scientist, you'll be elated by all this. Oh, this is wonderful, right? So, this is the background in which the message of quantum physics is just not being hard. You have to understand this clearly. You know, the most frequent question that I get is that why is not your theory so accepted? Because they want validation by others. I mean, I can understand the reason for it, but unless you understand why the validation is so very difficult from the hard science point of view, you won't appreciate the movement. So the movement of quantum activism is that in spite of all this fear of scientists, the fact is that quantum physics is saying that there is a domain of unity. A little bit closer examination shows that this domain of unity is consciousness. It's very easy to anticipate it because unity has to split up in order to give experience, right? In unity there is no experience. In unity in unconscious there is no experience. How do we get experience? Unity splits up into a subject and an object. This subject and object is what you call awareness, so you all call awareness. Of course, what has taken place, again, from Victoria's point of view, the reason that the N.E.O. becomes an important movement is that the awareness, for most people, does not any longer mean that you have a subject looking at object. The awareness for most people has become very constricted, partly because of this philosophy of scientific materialism, where everything is object, but partly because people's habit. People's habit comes from how they relate to their brain. Does the brain determine their habits, or do they determine their habits? Quantum physics is very clear, but that message, if you avoid that message, and if you are sold into the scientific materialist message, then brain is it. You are just the brain, you have nothing else. You are a superfluous epiphenomenon of the brain. And so brain determines you is fine with most people. What does it mean? What that means is that you are an object. And what that means is that, of course, you are the object that you call me. You have made I into a me. And so naturally you would be wanting to take care of me all the time, forgetting that there is an I behind the me, and of course forgetting all that oneness along with it. This has produced huge amount of social problems. Some economists are aware of it, some politicians are aware of it, some social reformers are aware of it. What people generally are not aware of is that the worldview in science has changed. It's now experimentally established that there is indeed a unity consciousness. There is indeed a domain of reality in which communication is instantaneous. And there is indeed in human brains the ability of connecting to that communication. This is by experimental data. And there is neuroscience data which shows that we really have an I with no me. So this me-centeredness is not even supported by neuroscience data. There is a place for me in the brain, but when the brain operates in creative experiences, when the brain operates in people who meditate a whole lot and transform a whole lot, their brain is different. Their brain is not centered in a little place in the brain. Instead, their consciousness is not located in a little place in the brain. Instead, it's located all over. The self they experience, this transformed people experience, is very different self than ordinary people experience. So the assumption that Victoria made quite independently is surprisingly true. Neuroscience data and quantum physics both are saying that yes, people become very limited because of their being dominated by the brain. So we come to the idea of transformation. Quantum worldview gives us the vehicle to transform as well. We call it creativity. We have always known about creativity, but we thought it's the domain of the artist, the sculptor, the singer, the poet. We never thought that creativity is for everyone. Quantum worldview, one of the biggest messages that creativity is for everyone, and people who talked about transformation in the early days, like religions and spiritual traditions, they are actually using the creative process. There is no mysterious thing about all those things that we talk about that goes into transformation. It's the same creative process that the artists use, that the musician uses, that scientists also uses. That's the recent finding, although many scientists don't realize it's true. So the worldview limitation is going to haunt us, no question. There is a big division and that's going to stay for a while. But the point of us taking this directly to people is that many people are worried the way society is going. Many people are worried that the advances of civilization that we have begun making with some very lofty institutions such as democracy, capitalism, and liberal education, they are being degraded by this worldview struggle in a very major way. And unless we begin an alternative movement to wake up, same kind of situation, in other words, when we had this big battle between Christianity and modernism. I think you know enough history, how that went on for a couple of hundred years before the religions backtracked and the education took place. In other words, the changes started taking place in Descartes and Galileo, and that was 16th, 17th century. But the liberal education did not start until almost the end of 18th century. So you have to give that gap. It took a couple of hundred years of struggle. And however, we may wishfully think that this is going to be easier because our communication is so much faster and all that. No, it's the opposite. The internet has become such a jungle of what we call false news, misrepresentation of things, untruth, that it is very, very difficult in view of the internet to teach anything that resembles truth. How do you know who is telling the truth? How do you know? So the challenges are huge, and quantum activism is a movement to face up to the challenge, same as the N.E.O. facing up to the challenge, that okay, enough is enough. We are going to speak about truth, speak about how people actually are, what is their awareness level, and what is the right way of thinking about people, namely the quantum worldview, and how do we get to raise the level of awareness in people. Can people come from that very base level of me-centeredness and negative emotional brain circuits, pleasure circuits, and information processing, not even using the brain to the full extent. And then you ask, the next question is very important, what would be people's motivation for doing it? Because of course the reason people stay with their status quo condition, very low level of awareness, is that it is fairly satisfactory to most people. Oh, they get a little bored, some people get a little concerned about meaning of life and purpose of life and all this stuff. But by and large, people are pretty okay with it in the developed countries. So the developed countries, especially the domination-oriented countries, are probably going to be difficult to respond to calls for change. Fortunately, they are not all the cultures that are are in the world. And the developing countries, second world, like India, Brazil, South Africa, Russia and China are kind of difficult to talk about because they have totalitarian governments in place. But if that would not be the case, they could be included. And countries in Eastern Europe. They are not exactly in the category of developing countries, but in effect they are, because they are overshadowed by the big powers of European economy, for example. And let's face it, Germany and France dominate the European Union. There is no question that Czech Republic has very little power within that structure. So, in these circumstances, I feel that the quantum activism movement, which says that quantum worldview has to be used for thinking, living, and making livelihood, and certain dictates of the quantum worldview, namely, we can be creative. All of us can be creative, but the basic requirements are also very interesting. We can be creative much more if we have congruence in our life. It's the conflicts that present as difficulties of being creative. Creativity is required for change. But if we have conflict built into us, then we have to also simultaneously work on the conflict. Some of it requires creativity. So there is a little bit circularity there. We have to work at the same time. You use the creative process to remove the conflicts as well. But all that is detail. Sum and substance is this. Why do you want to be a quantum activist? What is the motivation? That still has to be brought out. And I think it out this way. Quantum physics is literally saying that there is a huge amount of potentiality that defines the human being. If the human being is not the brain, then look at it. Suppose human being is consciousness, as quantum physics is saying. Consciousness and its possibilities. This is what quantum physics is saying. And possibilities are not exhausted by material possibilities. It's clear that we have mind, we have feelings, we have even intuitions. So all those are possibilities too. This is what quantum science is about. All things are possibilities. Everything we experience consists of possibilities. And the brain makes memory of these possibilities. The body makes memory of this possibility. Another way of putting it is that body and brain are hardware. With the help of these possibilities of mind and feeling and intuition, we make software for the hardware to operate in a purposive and meaningful way that human being is. So if we understand the human being that way, and then somebody says, hey, you have just scratched the surface of all the possibilities that are available for making the human being. You have this huge amount of, infinite amount of possibilities left over which you have not even touched. It's like you are living in a very much affluent way and you don't know any better. You think you are doing great because compared to the past, you have read some history books and you also see other places, like you go to Africa and you go to very poor countries, villages in India or Brazil. They will show people who are even more miserable than you are. So you think I'm doing great. And then somebody says, hey, but you have infinite wealth in this bank. But there's only one catch. You have to know the password to get into your account. And that password, of course, is creativity. What would you say? Would you hesitate for a moment? I want that password. So it is really a very large amount of wealth that we can have that we are ignoring. And that includes material wealth, it does not exclude it. That huge amount of mental wealth, emotional wealth, archetypal wealth, love, beauty, justice, truth, all these things that we got, whether we consciously call it or not, who would not want more love in their life? Who would not want more satisfaction in their life in the presence of abundance or power? Not only personal power, the power to empower our close friends, our family. Who wouldn't want to do that? And this is the kind of potential we are talking about. So the motivation is there, but you have to be aware of it. That how to create the awareness of the problem. And so we are joining hands. We have the theory, we have the method by which we can do it, and Victoria is working on this, creating the nitty-gritty of it, how to make people who are at the low level of awareness, how to give them practical hints, clues of how to become more aware. The method is still creativity, method is still education and all that, but the practical stuff is also equally important. How do people know that they are at this level? How do people know what happened to them when they increase their level of awareness, or level of happiness, or level of intelligence, or level of confidence? We have to demonstrate that, look, there are these different strata of people, and show them that if you get to the higher strata, then you are more intelligent, more happy, more affluent, more everything. And that's the way we can influence people. So the movement is about simply, very simply putting congruence between how people think, how people live, how people make their livelihood, and very simply put also that people are living right now at a very low level of awareness. The basic human condition indeed is quite miserable, although people are not often aware of it. So they have to be made aware that high potentialities are available that will radically improve their living condition, their happiness condition, their intelligence, their feeling abundant in riches, and creating that awareness is also part of the program of these organizations. So what I'm suggesting is, of course, huge educational program. And I have already helped some friends in India established a university. We are starting classes this August 31st, first class for a 10-day long, intense workshop consisting of actually a complete exposition to how people can change, personal growth, and then we'll have another 10 days on how people can grow professionally, bringing congruence, the same idea of congruence in their life. So our mantra is congruence, wholeness, archetypes, this kind of thing that we talk about. And the idea always is to change ourselves and then take it to the world. We do not preach that we do not live. We do not preach anything that we do not live. Do I live congruence? Yes, I live congruence pretty much. There is still some incongruence left in my life. I don't deny that, nor do I hide it. But I'm determined that eventually I'll get rid of those incongruences as well. So this is definitely all about what we want, our talk. Whatever we teach, we will follow it. This is why I call myself a quantum activist. I use quantum physics to live. I find that life has become much more satisfactory because I use quantum physics. And I want you to live quantum physics not only because it is reality, but also because it opens up such wonderful potentiality for you to grow, to be happy with, to be intelligent with, to go with. Okay, I think I've got a bit.
It's okay. We didn't change
You want to see some of the...
If you like, that's we.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's have a little bit of... Let me see what... Okay. Waves of potentiality. Of course, we cannot draw waves of potentiality. It looks like ordinary waves, but they are waves of potentiality. That's the idea. This is what the world is. There is no world. You know, the first mistake we make is to think that there is a world always there. No, quantum physics is categorical. There is no world out there outside of our experiences. The world happens in our experience, moment to moment. If nobody is experiencing, there is no world out there. If there is no living creature on a planet, everything is potentiality. This is the hardest thing to comprehend and accept. Nevertheless, quantum physics forces us to accept this. There's just no way out of this. This is the way reality is according to quantum physics. And if you want to disbelieve quantum physics, it's at your own peril. All our technologies that you're using right now, computers, included, everything practical, based on quantum technology. Okay, this one I think, the important one is that this is the construction of materialism. It's only upward projection. Let's go to the next one. This is the probability card that quantum physics allows us to calculate. Probability calculus works very well for large number of objects, and when you do physics and chemistry, you have very large number of molecules to deal with, so you can get by with probabilistic calculation. And this is why quantum physicists don't bother any further. They don't try to understand the meaning, what it means to say that objects are waves of possibility. They say, well, we can calculate without knowing the meaning of that. We can calculate these probabilities, and that is enough for our purpose. So this is why the meaning had to wait. The physics was discovered, the mathematics was discovered in 1925, 26. And then this probability interpretation was discovered right away. And as soon as that was discovered, most people are happy. They didn't want to go any further. They knew that there is huge implications of this, but they just stopped their mind because they didn't want to rock the boat. And this is the way, of course, most people are. That's the low level of awareness that we are complaining about, right? So it took like, I wrote my paper in 1989, so 1925 to 1989, that long, people had to wait to discover the meaning of quantum physics. Next one. This is downward position, how the spiritual traditions look at it. Consisting of what? If you have possibilities, and consciousness does what? Downward position. So we have a definite way that consciousness acts on the world now. This has never been discovered before by spiritual traditions. How consciousness actually relates to the world. What does consciousness do to influence the world? This part being unclear means that people were assuming all kinds of things. Somebody sits on a throne, waves a wand, that's one kind of image. Another kind of image, of course, is that what is given in the movie Ten Commandments. I don't know if you have seen it, that Hollywood movie where Moses went up the hill and then he sat down in meditation and the Ten Commandments come like lightnings were writing things down on a stone. That's another kind of image. Another kind of image that were created was that these messages come and they are absolutely unchallengeable messages because they have come directly from God. Every spiritual traditions, religions seem to claim, because it's an interpretation, that's what they claim, that God's words directly were heard by the original people who initiated the religion or the tradition, and those words then cannot be challenged. That's the dogma of the religions. Quantum physics is saying, stop all those speculations. This is the way consciousness interacts with the world, simply choosing from the possibilities, the actual event. Possibility means a whole spectrum of possible events. Consciousness chooses the particular event that a particular observer is going to experience in a particular event. That's all. It's choice. No need for any one, no need for any lightning writing on a stone, no need for having this truth that is coming to some people which cannot be challenged. No, none of that. It's very clear, scientific. Objects are possibilities to choose from. Consciousness does the choosing. That's it. Next, please. So this is how it happens, observation. Not just the eye, we can also observe with our ears, we can observe with all our sensory organs, and we can observe also with our mind and feelings and intuitions. So all that can be included in this approach of looking at things. So the eye we are looking at is a metaphor for all kinds of observations. When we observe by senses, we actually have to give meaning or associate feelings with it, otherwise we cannot cognize it. Cognition actually requires these other ways of knowing. Sensing is actually the one that has to be associated with either thinking or feeling or both. Next one, please. Okay, this is an example of something very strange that happens in quantum physics. Again, this is very hush-hush. Physicists don't publicize this because they would rather have you believe that everything is continuous, as in Newtonian physics, but in quantum physics, objects can jump around from one place to another without going through the intervening space. Very strange. Without going through the intervening space, you heard me. How can that happen? Well, the impossible happens in quantum physics. This is called a quantum leap. What does that mean? That means that we have the power of choosing the new, never before, and happening that has never before happened. What does that mean? That means that I can have an incurable disease according to most judgments, and I can heal myself because such an event is allowed in quantum physics. I have incurable habits and I can change from those incurable habits because quantum leap is possible. Otherwise, what people usually argue that how can you change habits? Because I try to do a little bit, but I fall back. Never works because I fall back. If movement is continuous, indeed, it is very difficult to see how we can ever change because you will always have the tendency of falling back. Quantum physics is saying, no, there is no falling back because we just change and that drastic. That will not be undone because there is no intermediate steps. What you have discovered is that, just that, it's new, forever. You're not going to get rid of it just, because you know the path backwards. You don't know the path backwards. Creativity is something that creates an image of ourselves that is forever new. We can create ourselves in forever new ways. And once we have created that new thought, the new feeling, the new way of being, no going back, that's going to stay with us. And we can change accordingly. This is tremendous knowledge because there is no backtracking. Next one, please. Okay, these are much more detailed. Mind gives meaning, so mind has a specific role that we never understood before. Because of the challenges of scientific materialists, actually we started giving attention. What that is that distinguishes mind from a computer. People talk about computers having artificial intelligence. Is that true? Can computers be artificially maintained? Can computers think? And now the wisdom has come finally that no, there is something that computers cannot do. actually can make representations of meaning, but computer is a symbol processing machine. All it can do is to make representation with the symbols and then process the symbols. It can never understand the meaning behind the symbol. Computers don't have the capacity of understanding. This is what makes us uniquely human. We understand. Not only that, we thrive in understanding. But you know what is the condition that we have, the lowest levels of awareness? People don't bother to understand anymore because they say, oh, the understanding is there in the internet. But understanding is there in the internet, but whose understanding? Not your understanding, another person's understanding. And this is great because dictators can influence you because you don't care anymore about understanding. So the high echelon of the culture, and this is common in every society, changing politics, changing everything. It's the elites who decide what you should think, how you should process your machinery, which is your brain. They tell you, well, this is the way to do it. How does a guy like Donald Trump, which is a total liar, influences so many people? By simply spreading his own brand of news that he calls, whatever he calls. He calls every other news fake news. So he sells fake news as true news. How does he do that? Because that's the information people look at in America. There's about 45% of Americans. The only information they process is that the channel called Fox News, and all the news there is Donald Trump's news. And this is how systems become dictatorial. Czech Republic don't have to go very far. It was just before 1990. You don't remember, most of you are very young. I was not so young in 1990. I still remember the elation that I felt when the Berlin Wall fell and East Europe was liberated. Tremendous. Before then, it was communism. You were under dictators. Just as I remember very sadly when I was born in India, I was under the rule of the British. Same kind of thing. Imperial dictator versus communist dictator. But we both have been under that. And do we want to go back under that just because of internet, just because machines is supposed to be able to replace us? This is what we need to understand. Meaning. Meaning is uniquely human. This is not something that computers or any machine can do. Next one, please. So this is just a basic slogan. This one is very important. So you have this place of feeling. Feeling is very nebulous concept until you encounter this concept of chakra. Feeling is very nebulous because we feel something obviously, and it feels like a movement. Just compare a regular intellectual thought, like this is a piece of paper. That's an intellectual thought. And then this piece of paper will say something that hits you emotionally, and you feel something. What do you feel? You feel passion, energy. So it's a certain thought, a very special thought, we call them emotion. Some movement is involved, but movement of what? Because this was unclear, scientists had a headache of denouncing there is no such thing as feeling, because you cannot even define it. What kind of movement is it? And now we can define it because the Eastern cultures, they had discovered these chakras millennia ago, and now we have an explanation. Chakras are those places where there are fields called liturgical fields, purposeful functional fields. They help to make the software for the organs that has to carry out specific functions. And the big secret of biology is that all these functions are purposive function, and physics can never give you purpose. Physics only can define causes, That's what Newtonian physics is about. Changes come from causes. But here every organ not only has cause behind it, but also has purpose in its function. Every organ performs a purposeful function. Like the basic organs of the root, the anus and the digestive organ. It's to digest food so that we can survive, so that we can grow and the body can grow and all that. And that's a purpose. Same thing for sex, it has a purpose of reproduction, that's a purpose. Same thing for heart, which is also the immune system, its purpose is to defend the body, distinguish between me and not me. And it goes on and on. Of course, the brow chakra is very important because right behind it is the neocortex, prefrontal cortex, which is the place where we think. Huge purpose. The purpose of it is to think. So all these organs are purposive organs. Where does the purpose come from? Purpose comes from consciousness, because when consciousness chooses, it can choose with a purpose. It's as simple as that. So choice is downward causation, but it's a downward causation with purpose. Consciousness is always choosing with a purpose of something. And this is why when we don't have purpose in life, we feel so dissatisfied. Purpose is very important to us, just as meaning is very important to us. So in this way, this understanding of the chakras is a major step accomplished in the quantum world. This legitimizes all the feelings because no longer our feelings very much of a stranger. And now we can validate all these movements of energies through the chakras that Chinese practices like Qigong and Tai Chi and all that talks about. Also Indian practices like yoga, they too talk about these chakras. Pranayama, all these Eastern practices, meditative practices start making sense. Okay. And most important, that heart chakra. We hear about the heart. We hear about the heart and how the heart is as important as the brain. That's one of your major slogans. We must integrate the way of the heart and the way of the brain. We all know what the brain does. Brain thinks, brain is intellectual, brain gives us rational thinking. This is the brain's avowed purpose in the beginning. Brain can be elevated to do more, but until you do that, brain does rational thinking. That's brow chakra. Fine. What does the heart chakra do? Heart chakra has immune system in it, which job is to distinguish between me and not me. So it's a little bit of subtle. You have to recognize that if we suspend that function of distinction between me and not me, it is that function of distinction of me and not me that becomes a barrier between me and you. But if I suspend my immune system and if you suspend your immune system, then we have no distinction between you and me. And that is, of course, what we call love. So in that way, immune system represents a very lofty feeling of love, which is impossible to gauge with rational thinking. The feeling of love epitomizes all the positive feelings of which we are capable of. And so we talk about feelings, we center on that one exalted feeling of love. And that's what we want to integrate in all the thinking calculus that goes into practically everything, in businesses and politics specifically, because those are two very important social systems. And what happens? Politics, we look at power, but we look at it initially without love. What does that lead to? Power for oneself and eventually to dictatorial systems, because one person becomes powerful and a dictator. What happens when we approach power with love? Then we still get power, but we share it with other people, at least the people we love. And if we can love more people, then we can share with many, many people. And this is the difference between Donald Trump and somebody like Mahatma Gandhi. In one case, one is sharing, in the other case, one is contracting. And this is the difference of leadership as well. Businesses, a different attitude towards the particular archetype. Archetype is abundance. And so when the businesses are without love, then they create abundance for themselves, namely all the corporations that you're looking at right now. All those corporations, Coca-Cola and whatever else you have, they're all concerned with their own profit. Could we bring love into corporate practices? When just before we started, Peter was talking about corporations don't even know that many of their employees have talents that they're not even using in their job. Wouldn't it be nicer if the people could use their talents and had a good match with their job? Wouldn't they must be much more productive and serve the corporation better? But how do you even look at people as people without this concept of love? And this is why it's imperative to bring love and the brain together in making up these social organizations that has so much influence on our life today, namely business corporations and political leaders. We really have to produce new leaders, just no question about it. Okay, next one please. Okay, this we can skip. We can skip. We'll skip this one too. Yeah, skip. This is a beautiful picture, but I'll skip. Another beautiful picture, I'll skip. Skip this one too. Keep this one as well, but next one. Let's speak about this one. This is the first experimental verification of the quantum worldview that I proposed in a book called Self-Aware Universe in 1993. Even before the book was published, I got a call from a Mexican neuroscientist named Hugo Greenberg, who was measuring the effect of this instant communication. Can a human being, human brain, have instant communication with another human being? This was his point. So he looked at my paper and he saw that I'm suggesting consciousness is one. And then his question was, if consciousness is one, then why can't two brains communicate directly with the help of this one consciousness, which should connect two brains as well as it can connect to elementary objects of matter? His argument was that human beings, of course, are conscious, and therefore consciousness should connect to human beings, and we should be able to detect it with mechanical, material apparatuses, not just in thinking, which of course is called telepathy. So he set up two meditators, and then they meditate with the intention, which the idea was that if we intend, then surely consciousness will help out and help out into instantaneous communication between them. So they intend on instantaneous communication. With that, they meditate with that intention. And while they're meditating, they're separated into two different, what is called Faraday cages, through which there is no electromagnetic wave communication possible. And then one subject is shown light flashes, the other one is shown nothing. Both subjects' brain are connected to EEG machines, which measure brain waves. Look at this. This is really interesting data. So the bottom curve on the left, one curve is showing the EEG from the subject who was shown the red is showing the EEG of the subject who was shown the light flashes, and the green is the EEG recording of the person who did not see any light flashes, just meditating that there will be direct communication. And look at that, look at the two potentials so close together. Computers measure it to be a 71% overlap, way beyond any kind of statistical error that might produce it. And to top it, they did with control subjects. Look at the colors have changed. The red now signifies the person who did not see any light flashes, and green now represents the person who saw the light flashes. Look, there's hardly any red. It's just a resting potential of the brain. So clearly shows that if you don't meditate with your intention, nothing is going to happen. But if you meditate with intention, that's all it takes. There's a huge message in there. Huge message is that our intention is a very, very important driving force in anything we do, including transformation and creativity. Next one, please. Next one. We can skip that one, skip that one. Skip, please. Skip. Skip. This is important for health, but we're not going there, I think. Skip. 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 Now, creativity. Creativity consists of 4 stages. Very mysterious stage is the number 2 and number 3. Preparation is work, we understand that. Manifestation is to take a creative idea and then make a product, we understand that too. But the incubation gives you the image of a bird sitting on an egg, doing nothing. How can doing nothing contribute to a product? It seems like doing something. And this is where the quantum physics comes in tremendously. And this understanding could not be done without quantum physics. Doing nothing means that your unconscious is active. And what happens in the unconscious? Unconscious, everything is waves, including your thoughts. They have become waves of possibility. And waves do only one thing. Waves cannot stay in the same place. They will grow and grow and grow, becoming bigger and bigger pools of possibility. And so consciousness can choose from this huge pool of possibility. See, if you had the choice of choosing from just the puny possibility that you can think consciously, or if you had this huge unconscious pool of possibilities to choose from, what would you do? Only thing you have to do is to give up that complete control on things that you want to do. If we give up the control, then unconscious is going to choose with downward causation, and you're going to get the advantage of huge pool of possibilities to choose from. Only thing you have to give up is control. Only thing you have to do is intent. You have to give up the control and intent. Intent what? Intent for the creative insight. Intent that the movement of consciousness, that ground of being comes to help you. Which is actually what ancient people call divine grace. So we have recaptured the idea of divine grace once again, and that's what gives us that sudden insight, except it's all physics, so there's no mystery here. We are that one consciousness. It's a question of how do we access it, and what I'm saying is, do we access it by A, relaxing, and B, intended. And there are a few other details in between, which we won't go into. But there's a slogan here that I like to point out to you. I call this, what you have to do is really alternative incubation and preparation. Preparation is doing, incubation is being. So I became aware that there is this Frank Sinatra jingle, do, which is quite well known in America. So that is the secret of creativity. It's not just first do, then be, but alternative do and be. In other words, that do is the slogan of the quantum activists. We do to get creative insight, to change. Manifestation is making changes. And that's it. That's quantum activism.
Is intention always necessary for the creative process?
Say it again.
Is the intention always necessary for the creative process to happen?
I think intention is pretty much always necessary, although there have been cases of quantum healing where people have been suddenly healed from an ailment, and the role of intention is not necessarily clear. But I think that what happens in those moments is perhaps if we really examine the person, then the person would realize that in those moments the person found himself or herself in a very relaxed state in which the desire for living came back very strongly, and that probably made the intention and got it.
And what about the intuition? What about the intuition in this process?
Of course, intuition, we left out, but intuition is very basic, yes. I generally speak about 7 eyes. The first eye is inspiration, second eye is intention, third eye is intuition, and then the 4 eyes are creative process. Imagination, which is preparation, incubation, which is the unconscious processing, insight, which is the quantum leap, and then instead of manifestation, there is an I word called implementation, which is equally good. So in that way, 7 eyes are creative.
But you know, I mean, when I compose a song or when I compose poems, I have never an intention to do so.
Well, you don't have any active intuition per se, but general intuition, intention is of course that I like to entertain people. No, not that way. What do you have generally? Why do you play music at all?
Well, I like music. It's a very selfish thing in my case. I just like it. So I do.
You enjoy it, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's intention.
But one thing is playing the music and one thing is composing the songs. And with poems, it's a totally different thing. I have never had a plan to write a book.
Play with words, Peter, the motivation for creating, okay, is very difficult to tell apart from intention, okay, because the fact is that you did compose, you do compose. So what inspires you to compose? And if you look at those moments, you find that there is the motivation, and that motivation is the source of your intention, when you actually intend. But there is always intention, otherwise there will be no activation of that creative process. Just look at yourself when you do that. You look at your process, you'll find it, you'll discover. I agree, much of it is we are not consciously doing it. Even the inspiration many of us deny. But if you look carefully, you will find that every creative practice is preceded by inspiration. Somewhere there was an inspiration.
I just wanted to ask one more question. Just the connection of mind and consciousness. I mean, should a person be clever or open-minded to get this creativity process?
Yeah, so open mind is another idea that is very important for creativity, and but you can include it as part of preparation. It turns out that you can prepare all you like, but if you have a closed mind, that don't help, because your mind still thinks that the answer is from what you know already. With that mindset, we can never discover the new. The mindset has to be that no, I don't know, and that I don't know is the opening that is necessary for new possibilities to come to me. This happens to many people, that they just cannot let go of the idea that it must be here somewhere in the conscious processing domain. And so people go on to live their entire life without ever being creative because they never experienced this concept of open mind. Open mind is a very hard thing. It's a rare gift to admit that I don't know. People are so anxious that I know everything. People are so stubborn that they know so much. That little thing I don't know just escapes me. And because of that, I have a hard time taking it. Thank you. That's a great question.
Maybe some small pause to take some tea, some coffee maybe. And there is also some dessert, Amit. So maybe we can offer to Amit something sweet.
Oh, you have all the cheesecake.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's break up the cheesecake. And
Okay, I will bring it. And then we'll continue.
You will not use the presentation anymore. You will not use the presentation.
Do you think is there any possibility to escape brain manipulation? You were talking about. Is there just because sometimes it's so difficult, you know, especially when I'm watching TV, this brainstorm. It's manipulation. I understand it, but it's to avoid it, just to switch it off, to switch off everything. It's so difficult.
We do
Is there
escape,
any
right?
possibility?
We sleep every night and we escape consciousness completely. We become unconscious.
Oh, what should it is?
And there is the concept of ultimate escape called liberation in spiritual tradition. You go out of the system. You never come back, you don't reincarnate, you don't put up with any of these ups and downs of regular living. But I tell you, the ups and downs is the creation of our wanting melodrama in life. If you are willing to give up the melodrama, there's no need for up and down. It can always be up, but it's boring. Because we want so much melodrama, we don't want to be boring. We create so much fluctuations in our minds. But I have to frankly warn you that, as dinner company, for example, I'm a dull person. I have no melodrama to share.
Here's the cheesecake.
Are you going to give your example what you have done?
Yeah,
Are you going to have one?
no, they don't. It's for you.
Very clever.
Quantum physics, everything seems also meaning when you want to influence your life like that. What's your opinion about the possibility to change your name?
Well, not completely possible. But typically we talk about changing.
I'm not a scientist, but I've read a couple of articles that you really can change your DNA.
Without the DNA that changes and when we say changing the DNA, we also need the software of the DNA. So I think that is just something linguistic. The DNA gives you instructions for making. then not all of these DNA will be active, not all the genes, because only particular proteins will be made in a particular organ.
So in fact you don't
You can modify the program and activate other genes.
because it's also energy, isn't it? It's also with DNA.
Well, exactly. That they're not anything fixed. They're tendencies. So you can change those tendencies by activating other tendencies. But there is a important thing here too, because DNA sometimes, some DNA has some defects in the sense that gene can be lacking or can be a defective gene present and that can produce a disease. So if we could change those genes, that would be good. It's not about that changing a gene, that concept is very difficult because that's changing the heart. But on the other hand, we can make a program that never uses that gene. That's possible.
Okay, how about
So again, changing the software is a better concept than changing the hardware.
Yeah, exactly. And this
now
is
with unborn kids, you know, and all those reproduction, artificial reproduction, where you can, for example, when you have a disease in the family, at the moment you can go to the doctor, say, I'd like to get pregnant, they say, okay, we do it artificially, they put 5 eggs inside of you, and then they test them, they take out those who are not okay. And you know, I'm a bit scared about all this process of interfering with this artificial type of reproduction. But on the other hand, my grandmother, she was suffering from breast cancer. My sister has a breast cancer. She's 40. And we even did testing for the gene, and we have a special gene that causes the cancer. Not all the gene, of course, but then the probability.
Definitely not that, it's probability.
Yeah, exactly. The probability to get cancer statistically, they say it's about 88%.
Yes, disposition. But look, what quantum physics is very good. The program obviously is a potential. And I certainly contribute to actualizing all the potentialities that contribute if I keep attention and attention of being healthy, then those two things, attention and intention of being healthy, will act in such a way that I always should help. And therefore these effective means will never be activated. On the other hand, problem arises they are not attentive. When we are inattentive, what happens is that consciousness chooses on the basis of my average behavior. And it's my average behavior where everything, including the effective genes, can become possible.
When they tell you the gene is there, you are also scared like here. So you must
that scary is a problem.
There is the fight. First thing, fight is never good, and then the fear is also very negative. So you put all your energy in fighting the fear, and then there's no much space for the rest.
That itself is problem.
absolutely. This is, I think this is the best idea. Remove energy from the equation. Maximum remove your energy and your consciousness from this point of view. For example, exactly. Make your brain play with some another idea. Just forget about that. This is, I think, first step. On this step, we can build some idea about healthy, like separate, not healthy because of this situation. No. this situation, forgot. We play with another things. Our brain, we make busy with another game. From this game, we find also a place for our brain to play some game about nothing. Okay, this is how I think that I try. It's my experience of my life. How I eliminate some sicknesses from my body. For example, one I noticed my...
Before we go into the part of really open discussion, you know, we are almost done with all the presentations, but it's just, as I introduced Dr. Goswami at the beginning, and then I introduced Victoria as well, now I think it's a really good time to also introduce Victoria as a founder of a very interesting methodology, let's call it, which is called the nature uniqueness pyramid of Contoret. And I would really like Victoria to explain a tool that she is just inventing at this moment in regards really finding out in which level of awareness am I as a human being, what can I do about it, you know, are there any levels of awareness and so on. So we very quickly found this slide, which is not the perfect one, but it's really good, I think, right? And I would really like to ask Victoria to explain a little bit more about the methodology, because I really believe it is in line what Dr. Goswami was talking about, and it gives you a little bit more insight about what Victoria is doing.
I think this slide is not really ready to be presented. If there is writing type to enter text, that means it's really not what I was ready about today to speak, but in the morning what happened that we spoke with Dr. Goswami, and we catch a point which is very uniquely correspondent to the quantum activism movement and neo-papal movement. How it's a new point of view which we found with Doctor, how we understand the process of spiritual transformation to bring to the mass and to a format of information, how we can to explain to people what we're speaking about when we are speaking about the consciousness, awareness in every minute of our life. This is project which is not really to be presented, but for our private today meeting, I just shortly can to explain you what I mean. I think this our awareness, which I also say a new name of awareness for public, this is our natural uniqueness. Because we are, everybody of us, we are absolutely unique naturally. We are not the same, like a fingerprint. We are not the same. We are everybody different, but we are similar by the group. And to measure how we are similar or different, we have many methods in already what is using in HR, in corporate level, in private life, in psychotherapy. It's, for example, it's tests like DISC, MBTI, or many another tests for our typology. How we are different or we are same people. And today, in 21st century, I can say that our differently by the ages, by the nationality, by the education, or our financial level in a life, it's not important anymore. we are in general in this planet, we are come to the position that we understand each other in completely different position. What kind of position is it? This is awareness, this is consciousness, this is exactly absolutely new position of typology of the human in a planet. And I think that is a time to start to measure also our awareness, our consciousness. How to measure it? My method is called the pyramid of natural uniqueness, because I say if we take our inner life, which we couldn't see by eyes, and our life outside everyday life, which we can see by eyes. For example, what I mean, this is what I like to do, what kind of music I like to hear, what kind of food I like to eat, what I am thinking about healthy style of life, how I care about my body, and many other things. So this is points which we can measure, and I have some from my method 27 unique points how my inner life reflect to my everyday life, like mirror. And this point of reflection, if we will measure through this outside point of reflection, so we come to this group of our uniquenesses. This group, I think, is going like a pyramid, and there is 12 levels, and 13th level it's a light. It's light. Light, which mean lightness inside of us. I think this pyramid in generally has 3 parts. This is down level, middle level, and up level. So for the example, I can say, for example, how characteristic for the level number 1. This will be person who is in darkness. It's like sofa, and this person is not really in transformation process yet. But like you see, this is all this life, it's about go up on the next and next level on the pyramid for each of us. Where we are here now, how I can say which level I am? Simple. We can diagnostic it because to this pyramid is connected the template with these 27 points of mirror reflection, my inner life to my physical life. So, for example, music. In the down level of pyramid is a house music. Very popular music now in this planet, house music. In the middle level, it will be music which is doing already with love popular music. I can say ABBA or Adele now, or what is the name of the Ed Sheeran. Ed Sheeran definitely got music. It's and up level, it will be classic music. It's already really music with very nice and good vibration. Food, for example, food. Here will be primitive fat food down there. In the middle, we care about our style of fooding. And up, there is only really simple food and really very nature food and simple food and not N.E.O. definitely no. So, and this is, for example, business. In down level of pyramid, there is some primitive work. Even there is not business. There are businesses, but more not creative job. And in middle level, there are businesses, many businesses, but they're already not businesses. It's already only creativity. There is not businesses anymore. So it's how we, everybody, can try to measure our inner potential and inner awareness. This is scandal theory. This is what we're speaking now about with Dr. Goswami, and I believe we will come to the kind of point of cooperation, because Doctor very happy about this idea in general. So I will not ask you about some question, okay? Because I'm not ready to answer.
One.
But no.
One. How will
Okay.
you measure it? By questionnaire?
Sorry, your question. Yeah. Now we are going.
But
We are.
are you sure that everybody will answer truly?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, and what we are going now to do, we are finalizing the presentation, and we will put it online, of course. Yeah, we will speak about it more. We will give some post on the Facebook, Instagram, YouTube channel. So we will do it for you, and we will bring more information about that.
Yes.
But yeah, for sure, everything. So I will be happy if Dr. Goswami now tell your first feeling about the pyramid of natural uniqueness.
So this natural uniqueness is very true, because the brain is wired somewhat differently for different people. Of course, the cultural part gets us into that similarity, so we miss that. Now within that though, the cultural similarity and the cultural upbringing, and also certain propensities that even though we reincarnate, even then the tendency is to be born in the same place when we are in this very low level of awareness. All these things conspires into being this very low level of awareness. That's the unity of all these people. They all have uniqueness, but very low level of awareness. That low level of awareness, miscenteredness, preponderance of negative emotions, too much information processing and no meaning in life, pleasure-centeredness in a defocused kind of way, and then finally addiction, which is of course the sort of pitfall of this lifestyle. So that is the unified thread of this. So I call it that's the base level human condition. If you at all don't want to change, but take this as kind of livable and okay, then what happens to this level of people are eventually that pleasure-centeredness leads to perverted pleasures, which is pleasure at the expense of others. Then it becomes socially detrimental. Then it can go into pathology. So those are conditions we're not even counting. So this condition is shared by the largest number. As you have the base level of the pyramid, that's the largest. And then we have the middle level, where we are saying increased level of happiness. That's the one thing we'll say. Increased level of intelligence, the ability to react to stimuli a little bit different than the base level. So what has changed? What has changed is that they have made a higher level of awareness, and that only means that more I is coming into the picture. The very base level cannot see beyond their me, and which means that they don't really experience the world as an I. And unless you experience the world as an I, how can you even change? So when that change comes, it comes through a little bit of opening that exists in everybody to recognize that, yeah, I am not an object. That's the beginning of transformation. And then we start building some positive emotional brain circuit. That's the second level that you have. Middle level. This middle level is very important because they are the connection with the very low level. As you go in to higher levels, then your ability to relate to the very low levels is compromised because you cannot quite identify with the problems at those levels. You have to be patient, in other words. For example, I have the tendency of telling people that, okay, you're too lost in your melodrama. But that's not a very encouraging statement. What is much more encouraging is for the psychotherapist who will take the melodrama seriously and very patiently show that, okay, you are creating this melodrama to escape certain problems and you have to really wake up to those problems and solve it. Just labeling it melodrama is not the way for them to lift. So, whereas we do need the high-level people to set examples, but we also need these middle-level people to make connections to the very low level. So this way of looking is very interesting from a practical point of view. We cannot do it otherwise. Because sometimes we tend to think, all we need to do is to fully transform people. No, that won't work because fully transformed people cannot, they get impatient. Why can't you be present-centered? Why can't you just look at things as they are? They give very general advice, which does not help to the person who is lost in the negative emotions and melodrama and all this. So this is the kind of approach you actually need.
So we will work on it together, Professor, and I believe in a few months we can present a project which our cooperation between the quantum activism movement and N.E.O people movement will be really focused to one point in real practice when we will be able to give and present to people a real practice instrument, how to measure our awareness, how to work with it, because what to measure is not enough. We need to measure and after we need to use it. That's why exactly we are measuring. And I believe that this measurement, this new typology, this spiritual typology, it came to help people to understand each other better. Because I think that this is exactly what you say about the internet jungle now. Because the information now, it's like in one big package. It's like, sale in a hypermarket. Yeah, everybody can to move to take this t-shirt, this trouser, what is it? Nobody really understands if in generally need this t-shirt or these trousers. And that's why to have information is one thing. The mostly important thing how to translate this information. And I think this pyramid it can help because if we see that somebody we need to translate some information which is based off the level number 8. We need to translate this information to the level number 3. So in this case, we understand that we cannot use word and method and forms which we normally use on the level 8. We need to make another packaging. We need maybe to separate this information for small quantity and give it by the help of the people from level 6, 5, 4 to correctly translated to all levels to bring light from the top to all pyramid in correct format.
So this training of the intermediate level people, the intermediate level people, what we call leaderships.
Yeah.
New leaders of systems whose job is to make that connection, and the transformational schools that we are establishing, they will be for the training of the leaders.
Question? How would you train or coach the trainers? Because the main goal would be to motivate the bottom level. Because you have to motivate them to make some change in their lives. And as you said, usually they feel they are okay. They eat pork, watch TV. They don't think because thinking is hurting. And you know what I mean? They don't.
We cannot.
There is no awareness of anything being just bad in their lives. They're quite. I would say they're quite happy, to be honest. Some of them. Exactly. Why not to keep them as they are? No, I'm just joking. But how would you coach the trainers? Where to find the motivation for such bottom level of the people?
Yeah,
Because it's
so
the same in HR work.
that's where we have to count on the fact that there is a movement of consciousness towards the kind of change that we are seeking, and the way to think about it is that we are part of that movement too, and the movement is a concerted effort, it's a purposive movement. We are part of it, and the crisis is also part of it. And because people want to solve the crisis, so that those are people who are apart from the leaders who don't want to change, who has already interest vested in keeping the status quo. And so we speak to those people. One fundamental rule of transformation is that you cannot transform unless you want to. Transformation is, this is the fundamental difference between Newtonian and quantum. Please let me state it again. If you have missed it, in Newtonian physics we can make changes only by forces. I put a force and that's the domination. I directly dominate you physically by controlling you physically. In quantum we don't need to do that, because the changes are going to take place in your unconscious, and so where potentialities act with potentialities. The material potentialities are fixed potentialities. To change them you have to apply force. But the mental and the feeling, vital potentialities, those potentialities are quantum potentialities. So I can just inject inspiration, for example. You, for some reason, you come here and you hear something from me, and that is not even directed at you, but just directed as part of that movement. But because you are also part of that movement, the whole thing is called synchronicity in Carl Jung's language. You picked it up. And that way, your unconscious picked up a wave of potentiality that interacts with already present waves of potentiality and gives you a new potentiality to choose. And all of a sudden, you have this idea. That's how changes take place.
It's new generation of HR, I think, in this
Without using forces, it's very hard to understand at first. How can you influence person without using force? But really, this is the civilized way of doing that.
No, you mentioned Gandhi, that for me is the typical example of that it can function.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a question for you. It just needs me to be translated. So if you would mind.
Tak já říkám, se mi velice sympatický Amit spojuje vědu se spiritualitou.
I really like you connecting the word of science with the word of spirituality.
A spiritualita je poměrně hodně obšírných slov, kterým si může kdokoliv cokoliv představit.
But spirituality is quite a broad word, a big word, where anyone can actually pick up anything.
Mně se na religion se přímo spojím s Bohem.
And what I like about your approach is that you connected science directly to God.
A mě by zajímalo, jaká je jeho představa o Bohu.
So I would like to ask you, what is your idea about God?
What do you mean? Nothing is one person's idea. In science, we don't do things that way. Of course, I had quantum physics already before me.
Věda takhle nefunguje, že co je představa jiného člověka.
Ale zajímalo mě právě jeho představa.
But still, his question is, how do you yourself perceive God?
You mean specifically my idea of God? Okay, I can tell you how. Okay, I hear your question, but I'm not trying to be obtuse. Maybe hard to talk about my personal attitude towards God. God in general, in the worldview itself, can be used for many of the stations of consciousness, and people do that without realizing that they are using different concepts to denote by the same word, and that causes confusion. The only useful God that I know, that is useful for me, is what I call quantum self. Now this quantum self, this concept is used in spiritual traditions as well. Like in Christianity, they would call it Holy Spirit. And then you have the concept of God the Father. And God the Father is a very difficult concept to relate to because there is no real relationship. It's the whole, so how can you relate to the whole? But when the whole is represented in you, in your brain, potentially when you can be in that state, in those states of creativity, where you in your ego and that self can interact, then calling that God is a very meaningful thing. Because I can yearn for that God, I can play with that God can play with me, and so a relationship. Now agreed that at some level of the spiritual journey, the game changes a little. At some levels of the spiritual journey, what happens is that we don't want to play anymore with anything that is manifest. We want to just jump out of the game, we have to escape altogether. Then the game is different, then you don't want this, you want to get out of the brain, so to speak. So then you want to realize that totality, and this is the final step of spiritual traditions where people yearn for the Father. They are no longer interested in whatever happens to the manifest dimension of their existence. So these are things that we can distinguish now. In the previous literature, these distinctions were not there, and extremely confusing. Now we can distinguish what was taken.
Okay, any further questions, general questions at this moment, or comments or thoughts? No. Okay, just to wrap up this whole whole part, we definitely would like you to be the ones who are interested and more creative in what we had discussed about. So we will definitely share with you not only the video of the presentation, but we will also share with you the links to the works of Dr. Goswami, information about the university that was already mentioned and planned to open in September this year. And also to the website and to the social media of N.E.O. People International Movement. And we would be very grateful if you would follow us and share the thoughts. And of course, both Victoria and Amit are open to your questions and comments, and that's their status at the moment, you know, to be the ones to discuss and answer and look for new ideas. So thank you very much for coming over today. We still have time if you want to discuss something privately with Dr. Goswami or ask anything Victoria. We would be very happy to give you the chance. Before we leave, we have one big wish of some of you. Some of you really wanted to take a group picture, so whoever wants to be a part of the group picture, please. Happy to, yeah, we have some special guests with special marks on their foreheads.
So I want to be.
Oh yeah, that's what I thought. So we would really like to organize this group picture up now, and then it's really up to you to either there is still some food over, so you can still stay over here and discuss with us, or if you are catching a bus or anything, you can of course run to catch your bus. But thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much, Amit, for your time.
Takže já chci poděkovat Viktorii Kontoret, že mám možnost položit vám 2 otázky.
I would like to thank Victoria that I have the opportunity to ask you 2 questions.
A zároveň chci poděkovat za váš čas, že se mi vůbec věnujete.
And also would like to thank you for your time.
Mám jednu čistě soukromou.
One question is purely private.
A pak mám jednu, kterou by možná chtělo zodpovědět více lidí. Já si dovolím tvrdit, že mnoho lidí.
And then I have one question, and I believe many people would like to give answers to that question.
Takže ta první.
So the first question is,
Jsem producent.
I'm a producer.
A je mi strašně blízký humor.
And I like humor very much.
Recese.
I know this word in English. It is a specific humor.
Který hraničí, ta recese hraničí někdy i s černým humorem.
Sometimes even black humor.
A chtěl bych vědět, jaký má názor doktor Amit Goswami z úhlu kvantového teoretika.
And I would like to know your opinion, as an opinion of a quantum theorist,
na takový druh zábavy.
On this type of fun, meaning black humor.
Anything that throws light on a situation is welcome.
Cokoliv, co na situaci libovolnou, co do libovolné situace přinese světlo, je vítáno.
Sometimes black humors are necessary to really jolt people up.
Někdy je černý humor nutný proto, aby lidi jakoby povzbudil, pomohl jim.
I personally don't like black humor because it has an element of sadness.
Já osobně černý humor nemám rád, protože má v sobě určitý smutek.
And I think it's unnecessary to go that far.
A myslím si, že není nutné jít takhle daleko.
But I can understand the artist's need for using it.
Ale dokážu pochopit potřebu umělce použít černý humor.
Because the wrongness of the world sometimes also goes very far.
Protože ta špatnost světa někdy taky zachází příliš daleko.
Děkuju. A teď ta druhá. Dlouho se zamýšlím nad tím, co přináší lidem frustrace.
For a long time I've been thinking of what does frustration bring to.
A myslím si, že největším přínosem frustrace je pocit viny nebo provinění.
And I think the biggest the biggest use of frustration for people is the feeling of guilt.
Myslím si, že každý malé uvědomění směrem dopředu vždycky přinese nějaký pocit provinění nebo viny.
Every realization or every step forward brings some kind of feeling, some kind of guilt being felt.
Ale ten pocit není přínosný.
But this feeling doesn't contribute to anything good.
A vlastně paradoxně brzdí poznání.
And actually slows down the way to realization.
Co by poradil doktor Amit Goswami lidem, kteří tímto pocitem trpí?
What would you advise to people who feel guilty?
Jak se co nejefektivněji zbavit?
How to get rid of it?
Of course, the frustration comes from too much emphasis on the intellect.
Frustrace vychází z příliš velkého důrazu na intelekt.
We really start believing that the arguments are all in favor of me. Why can't this person understand? And that gives frustration and maybe some guilt as well. Maybe I'm not adequate to explain it properly, and therefore he or she is not responding to my attempts of such brilliant communication.
Někdy, když třeba s někým o něčem mluvíme a ten člověk nám nerozumí, protože my všechno vztahujeme k sobě a máme pocit, že všechno se musí pro nás. Když se to neděje pro nás, tak se objevuje frustrace a možná i někdy pocit viny, kdy si člověk říká, možná jsem tady něco nevysvětlil dost dobře, když ten druhý tomu nerozumí.
I know I used to get frustrated a lot 10 years ago.
Býval jsem hodně frustrovaný i před 10 lety ještě.
And then when my heart opened, that frustration completely stopped.
A když se ale potom otevřelo moje srdce, tak frustrace úplně zmizela.
Because I can see people stuck and there's nothing that can change them, especially words. And then all I can give them is love, and I do. And so I don't get frustrated.
A vím, že vlastně to nejlepší, co můžu lidem dát, je láska, tím pádem, když jsem frustrovaný.
Takže když to uzavřeme receptem,
So to sum it up,
je láska.
the recipe is love.
Well, it's a recipe that you cannot really use as a recipe.
Je to recept, který ale nemůžeš použít jako recept.
When your heart is not open, you cannot just give love to someone.
Když nemáš otevřené srdce, tak prostě nemůžeš dát nikomu lásku.
But it's an indicator. If you get frustrated with somebody's obtuseness, then it's a sure sign that you are not capable of loving the person regardless.
Ale je to indikátor pro tebe, když jsi frustrovaný z toho, jaký někdo je nebo jak se chová, tak ten ukazuje, že tvoje srdce není dost otevřené.
A lot of people get exasperated, for example, with Donald Trump.
Spoustu lidí je hrozně naštvaných na Donalda Trumpa.
I mean, he really has no business for creating so much frustration in so many people.
A na druhou stranu on nemá přece moc, aby v tolika lidech vytvořil frustraci.
Right? You simply accept and love the guy. What's the problem?
To řešení je, tak to prostě akceptujeme, miluji toho člověka, kde je ten problém.
his suffering is representing a part of us, a part that we have neglected for a long time.
On znázorňuje určitou část z nás, část, kterou jsme velmi dlouho odmítali.
Which is the me-centered part that we ourselves very unable to transform. No?
Což je ta část, která je zaměřená na sebe, taková ta sobecká část, kterou ne vždycky dokážeme transformovat.
And it is now out there and we better deal with it.
A on tam najednou teď je, takže radši se s tím naučíme žít.
It's a good reminder that we have unfinished job to do in our own psyche.
Je to dobrá připomínka toho, že sami nemáme věci dořešené.
Děkuji.
Thank you.
Pak se můžete pracovat dál, že promítáte do odměňování, do rozvoje lidí, pak se promítáte na to.
Že máš tam ty konec,
A ty máš za dnes lety prostě už teďka, to je jako, jak je to na té trati, tak to prostě nechle.
Ale chce se stěhovat do Černoši.
Communication.